Olá, pessoal! Sejam muito bem-vindos e bem-vindas ao Inglês de Verdade. No vídeo de hoje, preparei um podcast curtinho e super interessante para você treinar seu listening de um jeito prático e divertido. Depois de ouvir, você vai responder a 5 perguntas desafiadoras sobre o que foi falado, colocando à prova a sua compreensão. Assim, além de melhorar seu listening, você ainda vai expandir seu vocabulário em inglês. Ah, e se quiser, pode ativar a legenda em inglês para acompanhar tudo com mais facilidade. Então, ajeite os fones, se concentre e vamos começar.
Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself, trying to explain a really specific feeling or maybe an idea, and you just think, ugh, there's no single word for this in English?
Oh, definitely.
Or maybe you've heard a word from another language that just perfectly nails an experience you've had, but yeah, we don't have an easy way to say it.
It truly is a fascinating thing. And it's not just for language learners, right? It's almost like opening a little window onto a totally different way of seeing the world.
Exactly.
These words, they aren't just sounds. They seem to pack in whole cultural understandings, maybe core values, or just daily realities that aren't squeezed into one term somewhere else.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why today we're doing a deep dive into some of these, amazing, often called untranslatable words. We've been looking into, why they even exist, what they tell us about different cultures, and maybe most importantly, how just understanding them can actually expand our own thinking.
Yeah, our emotional vocabulary too.
Right. Our mission here is really to show you how these, linguistic treasures offer a kind of shortcut to understanding the heart of a culture. And maybe ourselves a bit better, too.
And it's probably good to clarify right at the start when we say untranslatable, we don't mean the ideas are impossible to understand or describe. Not at all.
Good point.
It just means there isn't that one single perfect word that captures all the nuance in another language. You'll see what I mean as we go through some examples.
Okay, cool. So here's where it gets really interesting. Let's start with a classic, one that many people maybe know or wish they knew. Saudade from Portuguese.
Ah, yes.
Saudade.
It feels like more than just a word somehow. It's like a whole emotional landscape.
It really is. What's so compelling about saudade is, it's much deeper than just saying, I miss you.
Right.
It's a deep sort of bittersweet emotional state, a really complex mix of nostalgia, a profound longing, affection, and even, a touch of melancholy for something or someone that isn't there.
And crucially, it's often for something lost, or maybe gone forever, or even a future that might not happen. It's tied so deeply to memory, to time. It carries this incredibly strong emotional force, a yearning, really.
Wow, that description is so rich. So it's not just missing someone in the present, but it's almost like appreciating the longing itself in a bittersweet way.
Exactly. It's almost like holding on to the memory through the feeling of longing. It's not passive missing. It feels quite active, actually.
Does this feeling show up a lot in Portuguese culture, music, art, that kind of thing, given how strong it sounds?
Oh, absolutely. Saudade is practically a cornerstone of Portuguese and Brazilian culture.
Yeah.
It's deeply woven into their beats. Fado music, for instance, is famous for expressing saudade.
Ah, fado, right.
Yeah, that mournful, soulful sound. It's that feeling of yearning for what's gone, but also perhaps cherishing the memory. Maybe even finding a strange kind of comfort in that deep emotional ache. It's a unique way of naming a universal human feeling, but giving it this very specific, multi-layered identity. And, it's interesting, too, that a similar word, morinha, exists in Galician, specifically for homesickness or longing for your homeland.
Oh, wow.
It shows how related languages can share these deep feelings, but maybe shape them or name them just slightly differently based on their own history.
That deep yearning of saudade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think many of us can connect with that, even if we need a whole paragraph to explain it in English. But language also grabs those more surprising human emotions, right? The ones we maybe don't always admit to feeling.
Ah, yes.
Which brings us to Schadenfreude from German. This one always gets a bit of a chuckle, I think, because it's so universally understood, yet still no single English word for it.
Indeed. Schadenfreude is just a brilliant example. It perfectly captures that very specific, maybe slightly mischievous human feeling. The joy or pleasure you get from seeing someone else's misfortune.
Right.
Think about it, that tiny, maybe almost shameful flicker of satisfaction when someone who is really arrogant or maybe unkind finally makes a big mistake, or, just trips and falls in a harmless but public way.
Yeah, you shouldn't laugh, but
Exactly. You shouldn't feel happy, but there's a little part of you that just can't help it.
yeah.
It's usually not malicious glee, more like a subtle, sometimes fleeting satisfaction.
It's definitely a real feeling, even if we try to push it down sometimes. What do you think it says, maybe about German culture or just humans in general, that they actually codified this feeling, put a name to it?
That's a great question. Maybe it suggests a culture that's, well, perhaps less afraid to name the full range of human emotions, even the tricky or morally ambiguous ones.
Interesting.
Having a word for it doesn't mean it's encouraged, obviously, but it does mean it's recognized. It's seen as a distinct, identifiable experience. It gives us a precise label for something we otherwise have to describe with a whole phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so from those complex human emotions, let's switch gears a bit. Let's look at Japan, which often has these incredibly poetic words for like visual things or everyday experiences. How about komorebi?
Ah, komorebi. It even sounds beautiful.
It does.
It refers to the sunlight that filters through the leaves of trees, creating those shifting patterns of light and shadow on the ground.
Oh, lovely.
It's not just any sunlight, it's specifically that dappled light, the way it dances and moves. What's fascinating is how it seems to reflect a deep cultural connection to nature and a real appreciation for those fleeting, small, beautiful moments.
Like mindfulness almost.
Exactly. It touches on principles you see in Japanese aesthetics, like wabi-sabi valuing transience and imperfection. It's about noticing, finding beauty in the subtle, changing details of nature, things you might easily miss if you don't have a word pointing you towards it.
I love how precise that is. Just hearing the description makes you pause for a second. Okay, and then there's one that I think many of us might relate to on a very personal level, maybe slightly embarrassingly. Chundok. What's that one about? I have a bad feeling I might be guilty.
Yes, tsundoku often gets knowing smiles. It's the habit of buying books and then just letting them pile up, on shelves or bedside tables, often without actually reading them.
Oh no, that's me.
It's not necessarily about laziness. Often it's a genuine intention to read them, eventually. Many of us do this, right? But only Japanese has this single direct word for it.
That's amazing.
It raises that interesting question again. What does it say about a culture when they name a specific common behavior like this? Is it maybe a gentle, self-aware nod to that universal desire for knowledge, even if our time runs out?
Or maybe valuing the idea of reading.
Perhaps. Valuing the potential for learning, seeing value in just having the books there, like symbols of aspiration, even if they sit unread for a bit.
You've just perfectly described my living room. I definitely have a tsundoku situation. It makes me wonder if having the word helps people feel less weird about it.
Precisely. It gives a name to a shared experience, creates a sense of, okay, other people do this too. And this idea of naming what's important, it continues when we look elsewhere.
Right, like think about the Inuit people living way up in the Arctic. Their environment is so vastly different, and their language shows that in really striking ways.
Absolutely. For people living surrounded by snow and ice, knowing the type of snow isn't just interesting, it's crucial. For survival, for travel, for hunting.
Makes sense.
So in the Inuit languages, there aren't just one or two words for snow, there are dozens. Different words for, say, snow on the ground versus snow that's falling, or powdery snow versus snow that's good for building igloos.
Wow.
Each word gives vital info about texture, density, how useful it is. It's a direct reflection of their reality, their needs. It really shows how language shapes how we perceive and interact with our world. What's critical for survival gets named specifically.
That's such a powerful example. It's not that English speakers can't describe different snows, but we'd need adjectives, phrases.
Exactly. A whole sentence, maybe?
Whereas for the Inuit, it's one vital word packed with meaning.
Exactly. The concept exists, but the linguistic shorthand highlights the cultural priority. Now let's hop back to Brazil for another kind of word, a wonderfully affectionate one. Cafune.
Cafine. That sounds so soft, so gentle. What does that mean?
Cafune means to gently run your fingertips through someone's hair or maybe softly stroke their head. There's a really common, tender, affectionate gesture there, often between partners or parents and kids, close friends. It conveys comfort, care, closeness, all without needing words. In English, you'd have to say, to tenderly run your fingers through someone's hair or something.
Right, it takes a whole phrase.
Brazilians have cafune. It speaks volumes about the warmth and physical expression of affection may be common in the culture.
That immediately brings up a feeling of gentle comfort. Okay, and sticking with Brazil, what about gambiarra? That sounds very different.
Gambiarra is brilliant. It points to a really interesting cultural trait. Creativity, improvisation, resourcefulness. It means a clever, often makeshift, sometimes kind of unconventional solution to a problem, usually using whatever you have on hand.
Like a life hack. Or a DIY fix.
Kind of. Think of a DIY fix that might look a bit jury-rigged, but hey, it works. It's not just a quick fix, though. There's a sense of ingenuity, maybe even humor, in overcoming obstacles with limited resources. It really speaks to adaptability.
So it's maybe more than just MacGyvering something. It has this cultural flavor of making do, perhaps with a bit of flair.
Exactly, that ingenuity and maybe a certain pride in finding an original practical workaround. Okay, lastly, let's go to Denmark. For a word that's actually become pretty well known globally, hide.
Ah, yes. Hide, often translated as just cozy, but I always suspect there's more to it.
You're absolutely right. Hide, pronounced roughly, hygge, is so much more than just cozy. Yes, physical comfort is part of it, but hide is more a deep feeling of emotional well-being, togetherness, contentment. It comes from enjoying simple, pleasant things in a warm, comfortable, often intimate setting. It's about creating a special atmosphere, often with friends, family, maybe good food, soft lighting, that sense of human warmth and connection.
So it's an active creation of a feeling, not just finding a comfy chair.
Precisely. It's the pleasure of being present, feeling secure and comfortable with people, a conscious choice almost, to slow down and savor life's gentle moments. It says a lot about the Danish focus on community and a certain quality of life.
It's just incredible how these words, the ones we call untranslatable because there's no single perfect match, really do open up new ways of seeing these nuances. So what does this all really mean, looking at all these examples? They're not just interesting trivia, are they?
Not at all. They are absolutely windows into different ways of life.
Yeah.
They show us what is important enough to get its own special name by a particular group of people, which feelings are valued, which experiences are so common or so critical they earn their own word.
Like the Inuit snow words?
That's exactly. Or Japan's komorebi and that respect for subtle natural beauty. Denmark's hide emphasizing comfort and community. Brazil's gambiarra and its creative ingenuity. They're all clues, really, to a culture's heart, its priorities. They show the unique lens through which different societies see and interact with the world.
That's a great way to put it. But you mentioned earlier that these ideas aren't impossible to understand, just hard to translate with one word. Can you circle back to that illusion of untranslatability? That seems key.
Yes, it's a really crucial point. It's almost an illusion to say a feeling or a concept doesn't exist in another language just because there isn't a single word for it.
Right.
The underlying human feeling, the experience, that absolutely exists everywhere. It just means there isn't that one perfect single word equivalent. We can always describe it, explain it, understand it with more words, with context.
So we feel saudade, we just don't call it that.
Precisely. Every culture understands longing and nostalgia. We just use several words to paint that rich picture.
So how would we fully explain saudade, then, in English to capture it?
Well, you'd say something like saudade is a deep emotional state of profound nostalgic longing for something or someone loved and absent, often with a bittersweet awareness of its loss. See, it takes more words.
Yeah, quite a few more.
And komori becomes the beautiful, dappled sunlight filtering through tree leaves onto the ground. Heigi is maybe a cozy feeling of comfort, togetherness, and well-being, enjoyed in a warm atmosphere with good company and simple pleasures.
Got it.
The concepts are totally accessible. They just need unpacking.
Yeah.
It really just points to where different languages decide to draw their neat lexical boundaries.
I see. It's about the efficiency and precision of having that single word, not that the feeling itself is missing. This makes me wonder, why does finding these treasure words, as you called them, fascinate us so much? What does it mean for us, even if we're not, actively learning Japanese or Portuguese right now?
What really grabs me about this is that when you learn these terms, you're doing more than just adding vocabulary. You're actually learning new ways to think, to feel, to categorize your own experiences. Language and thought are so deeply connected. For example, if you learn German, maybe you come across Weltschmerz. Literally world pain.
World pain.
Yeah, but it means more like a profound melancholic weariness or sadness about the state of the world itself, a deep kind of disillusionment. Learning that word might make you reflect differently on feelings you've had about society or life, but never really named before.
Wow. So it's almost like each new language, or even just learning these specific culturally rich words, gives us a new lens, or maybe another filter to see the world and even our own inner life through.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. The more languages, or even just the more of these culturally specific words that we encounter and understand, the more flexible, the broader our worldview can become. It lets us notice aspects of reality or nuances of human experience that maybe we just missed or never really acknowledged before. It's like an expansion of our cognitive and emotional toolkit. It fosters empathy, I think, and a deeper understanding of just how diverse human existence really is.
So these untranslatable words, they aren't actually gaps or problems in communication at all. There's something much more profound.
They really are invitations to explore other cultures, yes, but also to understand feelings in richer, more nuanced ways, and ultimately maybe to connect with people from different backgrounds on a much deeper level.
Yeah.
They beautifully show that humans everywhere experience universal things, absolutely, but each culture chooses to specifically name certain facets, certain intensities that hold special meaning for them.
And that's pretty powerful, isn't it? It suggests that learning about language isn't just, grammar rules and vocab lists. It's about learning to feel and perceive and connect in all these different ways.
Absolutely. So next time you stumble across a word that doesn't seem to have a direct translation, don't just see it as a linguistic puzzle or a bit of trivia.
Right.
Pause for a second. Consider what it tells you about the people who use that word.
Yeah.
What does that specific word highlight as being really important to them? What does it reveal about their values, maybe their history, or just their daily lives?
And maybe, just maybe, it'll make you wonder, what untranslatable words might exist for our own unique experiences, those feelings we express with just a sigh or a shrug, if only we stopped to name them ourselves. Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Muito bem, pessoal! Você chegou até o final desse treino de listening. Espero que tenha curtido o podcast e que as perguntas tenham ajudado você a refletir e aprender novas palavras em inglês. Se gostou da prática de hoje, não esqueça de deixar o like, se inscrever no canal e compartilhar com seus amigos que também estão aprendendo inglês. Assim a gente cresce junto e continua trazendo cada vez mais conteúdos para você. Continue praticando, porque cada passo conta no seu aprendizado. E nos vemos no próximo vídeo do Inglês de Verdade.
E se você assistiu até aqui e quer aprender inglês sem gastar um centavo durante todo o processo de aprendizagem, com acesso a ferramentas, atalhos e mentoria que vai fazer com que você absorva o inglês de forma rápida e natural, eu te convido a conhecer o método dos 9 Passos para a Fluência, onde você vai conhecer a forma correta de aprender um inglês.
Good. Now we can go in the water.
Com acesso a ferramentas que irão te auxiliar nesse aprendizado. E o melhor, todas encontradas de forma gratuita. E entre essas ferramentas, uma você usará para manter contato com nativos do inglês para que sua prática de conversação seja mais eficaz. Porque nada melhor do que absorver o inglês diretamente da fonte. E quando eu digo que essas ferramentas são gratuitas, eu não quero dizer que apenas o primeiro mês será grátis, como degustação, e que se você quiser continuar usando, você terá que pagar. Todas as ferramentas que serão apresentadas a você nesse método são gratuitas para o resto da vida, até quando você quiser usar. Esse método é perfeito para você que não tem ideia de como e por onde começar, e para você que já tem um conhecimento em inglês, mas ainda não conquistou a fluência. Nele você será apresentado a atalhos que vão acelerar seu aprendizado, que estudantes que estão começando não fazem ideia que existem. 99% das pessoas que colocarem esse método em prática, seguindo passo a passo, conseguirão realizar seu sonho de se tornar fluente em inglês. Então, se você acha que finalmente chegou a hora de realizar seu sonho e dominar de vez o inglês, clique no primeiro link da descrição, que eu tenho certeza que você não vai se arrepender.